First order of business is to get a good Phillips head screwdriver on the end of your ratcheting drill and go ahead and pull all of the screws out of there. There are 5 screws in the back, and just pry it apart a little bit. It doesn't take much to pop it open. You pop it open, kind of turn it on its side and kind of split it open, because then the batteries will kind of sit up because the wires are still attached to everything. So you've got to get a way to get in there and get at the wires to cut them out. And the best way is just turn it on its side and just pull them out, so that now you have both ends of the cases available in order to start cutting the wires off. The wires are attached very solidly to the end of the battery, so there's no sense in trying to pull the ends off the batteries. Just cut the wires, but cut the wires as close as you can to the battery itself, and so that you have the longest length of wire available in the cases. You're going to need that wire. Cut through the wires just one little snip at a time. Don't ever try to cut across 2 of these, because these batteries are still live. They've still got power to them, so you don't want to cut across 2 of them at one time. But like I say, cut them as close as you can to the battery. They're kind of soldered on there, so you really can't get them off that easily just by pulling on them. So best not even waste your time on that, and just kind of cut them off one little piece at a time. Cut the reds and the blacks, and once you got them off of there, and you try to separate the batteries out, they're wrapped in a tape, so some of them are a little difficult to get out of there. You've got to pull that tape off in order to do that. That's the charging plug connector, which may be used at some point in the future, but not really right now. And then you've got to pull the wires out from the tape so that you've separated the cases from the batteries themselves. And once you get that done, then you've got your 2 separate battery cases you can start working on to put your lithium ion batteries inside. So now you have to take your electric rotary grinder with an end mill on it and start grinding out the ridges, the 4 ridges that are inside your battery box, to start making room for the batteries. Now you're going to have to take the die grinder and go ahead and grind out that little section where the wires need to go through the outside of the case. You're going to drill 2 holes and pull the red and black wire through there, and they're going to attach to the external battery box that's going to sit on the back of the Ezip bicycle. Then you're going to have to grind out the little triangular section on the top where the charger wires are going to go, to give yourself some room for the charger wires. You're going to have to make 2 diagonal cuts in the back where the wires are attached, so that the wires can now go down and get down into the trough. After you ground those 2 diagonals, it shows how you can put the wires in there, and then they will start heading down towards the trough. Then you have to grind out a hole on the back where you're going to provide space for the balance wires to come out. And you create a hole, and then you get this rubber plug. Now, if you've ever done drum brakes, you know that in order to get to the adjusters on the drum brakes, they have a little rubber stopper that you have to take out in order to be able to put a screwdriver in on a little wheel that turns, and that's how you adjust your drum brakes. Well, I thought of that, and I thought, you know, that little rubber plug would work out really good to grind a hole in the back of the Ezip battery case, and then you can put that plug in there, and that will prevent any water from getting in once you push your balance connector back in. Now that we've got our battery box pretty well ready to accept the batteries, now's the time to go back to our stash of cells that we've got to pick enough out in order to do a battery pack. We're going to need 112 batteries in order to do that. We're going to solder them up into those bricks like you just saw there. Well, there's a lot more than 112 here. That was the advantage of getting so many batteries at the beginning. All of these are around 2.25 to 2.3 amp hours, so they're all pretty similar in their capacity. I let them set for months and then I went through and checked the voltages, and I pulled out the ones that were holding over 4 volts. So now I have 112 batteries. Each one of these cells has been holding over 4 volts, which means they should be pretty good to make the packs out of. So I went through all of them, and I'm just showing you that I have checked the voltage, and they're very good cells to start making the full battery pack out of. So people ask me, why did I get so many batteries in the first place? And the answer is that I've got a lot of ideas for batteries. Now this represents the 4th battery out of number 2, 3, and 4 that I built. So after you've soldered all the cells together into their bricks, and then you wrap them with gaffer tape, and positive to negative, and you've got them all together. Now you can kind of see when you fit them into the box that they fit in pretty snugly. Once they're in there, they don't move around very much. But you notice that it also fills up the space so much, it's going to be difficult to get the wires in there. And that's the whole idea of putting the wires down in the trough. Because putting it over the top or around the sides or something just didn't work out. So I had to put them in the trough. I thought I'd ask my friend the Banana Man for his advice, because he seems to know how to pack things in. This shows the red wire and black wire taped down with Kapton tape in the trough. Cheapy acid brush. Stick that underneath. You guys already know what a great painter I am. Anyway, so Curry said that wire should be black. I say it should be red, since we're going to go on. We're going to think positive. We're going to go on the positive side on this stuff here. So even though this is all going to be hidden inside, you're never going to see this. For my own peace of mind, when I take it back apart with my short-term memory loss, so I can know what the heck was I thinking at the time. I don't know if they've ever done that or not. You did something, you came back and thought, what was the idea behind that? I have to talk to whoever did. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm the guy that did that. So we will paint these red, because this is now going to be on the positive side of the battery. And we just kind of slop it on there. We're not going to go all, we're going to cut this wire off at some point, so we don't need to paint it all red. Don't need to paint the town red. Okay, so we'll let that dry, and then I'll continue on my little soliloquy of what the heck it is I'm trying to achieve here. So I'm trying to get the 7 bricks in series with the balance wires and get it so it all fits inside the Curry case. Not as easy as you might think, because when you put your bricks together, these babies fit in here tight. It seems like everything I do fits in there tight. So not a lot of room for the wires. So I wind up using these little parts that stick out of the Ezip, which makes a recess inside here, and trying to push all the wires in here. These are the balance wires, and my black wire are running in this recess, and my little red wire is running in that recess. There's not a whole lot more it's going to go in there.
So let's talk about fusing this thing. Most people don't even bother fusing a bicycle battery. And Yahoo, with his working with the Tesla cars, and I started talking about the Tesla and how Tesla's got 7,000 batteries. And let's talk about that for a split second. That's kind of interesting. So Tesla takes 7,000 of these cells to power a car over 100 miles an hour, get around 300-mile range with a 200-pound human being inside. This is going to be 112 cells, all told. And that's going to take a 200-pound person around 35 miles. This is going to take 2.25, so around close 37, maybe 40 miles, depends on how you ride this thing, on 112 batteries. So bicycle much more efficient than trying to build an electric car. Electric car, you're going to take a lot of time trying to gather enough 18650 cells to power the thing. So more power to the YouTubers out there that are attempting it. I haven't seen the end result yet of any of that, but other than a Leaf extender pack, which is a real nice series of videos. But I ramble on. So rather than fuse every single one, you know, I'm using these thermal fuses that you won't ever be able to see that, but that actually is 100 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. If this thing ever got to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, this would pop. If it ever got above 10 amps, this would pop. Now the highest amperage that I got to on my first battery was 36 amps. And that was just for a very short split second that it did that. So the fuses were the same as these, and it was only good for 30 amps, 10 amps times 3 of these little fuses here, but nothing popped. So I'll stick with that for right now. When I start popping fuses, then I'll go back and take a look at it. Plus this fuse right in here, this glass fuse, let's see if you can't see that on the camera. Let's bring that more into view. The glass fuse that goes into there is a 40 amp fuse. So I've got around 18 fuses in this thing, 19 including that one. So it is fused to some extent, it's just not fused individually like all my fans keep telling me to do. Well, if you look at my videos, it tells you don't do what I do. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, the fuses from here to the negative are actually going to go in underneath here where you're not going to see them. But then after that you come out here and you got to go to the next one. So because the thermal fuse, and I want to get it to be exposed to some heat, I bend it like this. And plus I want to get these things out of the way because there's very little room on top here for this lid to fit in. And we want everything to fit tight in here. That's why I'm going through all the trouble of trying to find places for these wires to go. So I just take one of these thermal fuses, one of the straight ones, and you just bend it over. When the short one, just bend it over in a 90. Be kind of careful doing that because you can break these things doing that. And then I bend this up and about where it would be even on the top, I bring it over, and then you got to go positive to negative. So it just sits down in that hole there, and find a good spot where you can get them in there. And they kind of hide out in between the cells. Is this a good idea, a bad idea? I don't know, we'll find out. Told you I'd tell you how it worked. Well, on the first battery, I didn't pop any of them, so it works to some extent. And it beats just taking the number 14 wire and running it across like most bike batteries used to do before Yehu Garcia started telling everybody you really need to, let's turn that around. Get these looking consistent here. Okay, so the trick of using thermal fuses, see if I can center that, is how the heck do you prevent the thermal fuse, since it's going to, the soldering iron is going to get way over 212, how do you prevent soldering the ends of these things from popping the thermal fuse before you even get going? Well, I had to work on that, because guess what? I popped a bunch of thermal fuses before I figured out what to do. But you take a Q-tip, put some water on it, shove it down in there, make sure it's making contact with that. And then when you heat up your soldering iron, and you got to heat it up, stick it in the flux. You can hear the flux sizzling. I guess I can't zoom in and out, so I'll just keep it zoomed in on where I'm trying to solder here. And let's give it a shot. You should hear the water sizzling. And there, it wants to go away from me. You can hear the water sizzling now. All right, so there you've got that one. And then on the other half, the shorter half, alligator clip close to the fuse, and then go ahead and, too nervous. Not ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. Anyway, got my arms all the way outstretched in order to do that, so I didn't look kind of herky-jerky. So anyway, and if you did it right, just set up your, on the ohms here, and I'll touch these together. Whoops. And you get about 1.5, 0.8, something in there. Anyway, you touch them between the two fuses and see if the fuse is still together. And guess what? It is. So that's how you actually install these thermal fuses without getting them so hot that you actually pop the thermal fuse before you ever get a chance to get going.
Shows the balance wires all coming out of the end of the battery case. Shows all the balance wires hooked up and hooked into the iMax, and that shows the individual battery voltages that you're getting right now with individual cells. And this shows the battery all wrapped in Kapton tape. So now let's talk about the little plastic box that we're going to put on the end of the Ezip bicycle to install the 7th set of batteries on there for both of the Ezip batteries that we have built now. And I drilled a couple holes for the wire to go through, and then I cut it with a razor blade to get down into it so that the wires will go down in there, but you can still put the top back on. It'll all fit nice and tight. Then on the bottom, they drilled a couple of holes, and those holes match up with the holes on the back of the Ezip battery frame, so that you can take some screws. I bought some screws that are a little longer than the original, so they'll fit down through the box and you'll be able to screw those in there. And what it doesn't show, but I put electrical tape over those two screw heads so there wouldn't be any problem with the batteries actually touching the metal. And now it's time to charge the batteries, and I always read you're supposed to charge them in a grill. So I bought a grill and put the iMax and the battery in there as far as the original in there, and you see it's charging up to 25.20 right there, 4.16 on an individual cell. So I'm charging the 7th one individually. So because there's 6 cells in the original battery pack, I can charge that with the iMax B6. With the other one, I've got a little 2 amp charger that's plugged in right there, and that's charging the other set. Then you can put the 7 cells in there, and I've got the XT60 that you saw in the schematic, and you see I'm going to put that down there and get the black wire down on the bottom and the red wire on top of that, and you pop that plastic back again, and that holds it pretty tight once you get it in there nice and square. And then you can go ahead and push the XT60 in and connect the batteries up just like you saw in the schematic in the previous video. You can put the top on, slap the catches on there, and you are all set to go out for a bike ride. And let me tell you, I went out for a bike ride. I was very pleasantly surprised with how this all turned out. This was a lot of work to put all this together, but you're going to be so much happier over the lead acid batteries that you originally had. Thanks for watching.